Hello and welcome back to the Welsh Premiership podcast and our weekly review show. We'll be looking forward to this weekend's Welsh Premiership fixtures. Some big ties going on. Before we just get into the podcast, just wanted to thank our sponsors again, Lekker Food Co, who are sponsoring all these podcasts. And we'll jump straight in then with the Thursday night game on S4C. Newport hosting Ponty. This will be a big game, won't it, boys? And looking forward to getting down to watch that game. Newport obviously did really well in the cup. Ponty, they've done all right. So some big results. Obviously, they beat Newport in the first game of the cup competition. But I think inconsistency has been the buzzword around their camp. So what do you make of this game, and who do you think is going to be getting the spoils in this one?
I think obviously Newport start as favourites, but I think Ponty will be quite optimistic. They're the only team that have beaten Newport this season. And I spoke to Christian Parker in the week, and he was saying that the boys are quite optimistic they can go up there and maybe cause an upset, because obviously Newport, like I said, are favourites. They've had an outstanding season, a real surprise package, but you can never write off Ponty, can you?
Yeah, I think Newport will be going in as favourites. You see the form they've been in over the season. Like I said, I think they've only lost 2 games so far this year. There might be 1 or 2 boys out of Wales 20s. We're not sure the squad is yet, but the way they're playing, some of the rugby, the tries they've scored, you've got to fancy Newport to come away with a win tomorrow night.
Yeah, you mentioned you spoke to a Christian Parker, obviously new Ponty captain. Congratulations to him with Morgan Sianowski being called back up to join up with a Sevens squad. Ponty have actually signed as well another Wales Sevens player, Cole Swanwick. He made his Sevens debut in the Spain tournaments last month. And I know there's a lot of buzz around Ponty. I think they're expecting him to be a key player for them. I think he's quite versatile, can play fullback, wing, centre. He's very fast, obviously, being on the Sevens circuit, very fit. And I'd quite like to see him. Obviously, we haven't had team news for tomorrow yet, but it'd be interesting to see if he jumps straight in the Ponty team. Newport, we know all about them, don't we? The youngsters they have. Obviously, Ollie Andrew being with Wales under 20s, but we'll imagine we'll see the likes of Will Reid, who's been really impressive this season. Will Griffiths in the pack as well. So I think you can pretty much guess what Newport's team's going to be. And the problem that teams have had, they know what Newport are going to do, but knowing what they're going to do and stopping it are just 2 completely different things, aren't they? Moving on to the Saturday fixtures then, and Aberavon hosting Llanelli. Llanelli struggled so far this season, but they managed to pick up their first win over Bridgend a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully see them build some momentum. Aberavon coming off the back of a cup quarter final win last weekend. And I think there was a lot of drama down at the Talbot Athletic Ground as they beat Merthyr 17-16 with a last minute penalty try. So boys, Aberavon, you'd have to say are favourites for this one. But what are your overall thoughts on that game?
Yeah, well, obviously Aberavon did the double over them in the cup, didn't they? Llanelli have improved in recent weeks. I think they'll be disappointed with the result away to Ebervale because, I really thought they could go up there and maybe get a result. They didn't, but they'll still take confidence from the week before against Bridgend where they had the bonus point win. So, yeah, I think Aberavon will win, probably quite comfortably. But this isn't really a game Llanelli would have targeted to win. They'll target games against teams like Swansea, Bridgend, Ebervale. So, I think Aberavon will win, quite comfortably.
Yeah, like I said, Aberavon have already done a double over them. But I know the one game was quite a close encounter. I think Llanelli only lost by about 6 points. And that win against Bridgend a few weeks ago really gave them some confidence. Last week would have been disappointing losing at Ebervale. But there's a chance for them to hit back now against Aberavon side, who we know is strong. But then nearly went out of the cup on the weekend. So Llanelli will have a chance, but then you've got to fancy Aberavon to come away with the win.
Yeah, I think it's not very often I get my predictions right for some games, but I think I did say that with John Evans and Rhys Jones, I think Ebervale would play the conditions a lot better for Ebervale that night, and I think that was the difference between the teams. Jonathan Evans and Rhys Jones. It was a horrible night up at Eugene Cross Park, and I think they just played the conditions a little bit better. Obviously, a bit more experience than Llanelli's 9-10 partnership. So I think that was not the difference, but one of the differences in that game. And it doesn't really get any easier for them this weekend. You'd imagine it's Rodri Cole, Joe Thomas, probably been their Aberavon's 9-10 partnership. And yeah, they control the game well as well. Obviously, Joe Thomas, ex-regional player, Rod Cole, been really impressed with him. And one thing they do bring as well is when they switch on, they can bring the tempo, and that's what kills teams because they sort of got a double threat. They can slow it down and kick to the corners, and then when they have to, they can bring the tempo and score some decent tries as well. So I think, yeah, it's a gloomy prospect for Llanelli, but as you mentioned, they're more than capable of pulling off an upset if everything goes right for them.
Yeah, and also it's good to see Abraham captain Joe Tomlin-Reeves back on the weekend against Merthyr. You know, it's been a long time since he's played, and I'm sure all the Abraham fans will be happy to see him back on the pitch.
Yeah, that's another area, actually, just thinking about it, that's another area where they're really strong as well, because Joe Tomlin-Reeves obviously been out for a long time, but they haven't struggled in the back row with Lloyd Evans, Ashton Evans, and Andrew Waite as well. So with him coming back in, that just adds even more depth to Aberavon's team. And yeah, they are obviously looking like one of the best teams in the competition. So moving forward to the next game then, and Bridgend hosting Cardiff. Cardiff probably favourites for this game. Bridgend have struggled largely through through the cup competition and then the league, but they've got some decent wins as well. Obviously, we look back to that victory against Llandovery. So, Tobias, what are your thoughts on this game overall?
It's going to be tough for Bridgend. You know, they're going through a bit of a transition at the minute. Alwyn Davis is stepping up to the head coach role till the end of the season. So there'll be a few changes, I think, in the way they're looking to play. And it's probably one of the hardest games you can get as your first game up, you know, against a Cardiff side who were bang on form the last couple of weeks. You know, we watched them against Everton score 50-odd points. So you've got to fancy Cardiff. You know, some of the players they have at their disposal as well, players that control the game. And Bridgend, you know, Kane Wilton's off to Australia now to play his rugby. And congratulations to him on the move. But again, it's a chance for Bridgend to maybe develop some other younger players and give other people chances. But I fancy Cardiff this weekend, and I think it'd be quite comfortable.
I think the one thing I'll say Bridgend have got in their favour is there's no pressure on them. You know, they're playing one of the best teams in the league. They've recently lost their head coach. You know, got a new head coach in until the end of the season. There's no pressure on them. They can go out there, just try and give a good account of themselves. And no one expects them to win. And sometimes when the pressure's off like that, you can really go out and put a good performance in.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. Sorry, it'll be interesting to see how many other Cardiff regional players are playing for Cardiff as well. Obviously, with quite a few boys being retained by the Welsh setup, I think the regional side are looking at playing a few youngsters in the games coming up now over the next few weeks. So that might work in Bridgend's favour as well. And moving forward to teams playing Cardiff might have a bit of an unsettled Cardiff team then. But as we know with Cardiff, whoever comes in and plays for them is like going to be a high standard, and that's something they've not really let bother them. I think they change their team quite regularly, but they're still whenever someone comes in, they're ready and they're battle hard and they don't look out of place at all.
Yeah, and just like I said, there's no pressure on Bridgend, and it'd be interesting to see the way they want to play. I think of what I've heard so far, like a lot of rugby is going to be played a bit differently, maybe to how they played so far this season. I say there's no pressure on them. No one's expecting anything. And against the Cardiff side, we may have to make a few changes depending on who plays with Cardiff rugby this weekend. There might be a slight chance there, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and then moving on to the next game, and Ebervale hosting Carmarthen, and I think you'd have to say probably away team coming in, definite favourites again. Carmarthen top of the league. Ebervale struggled through the cup competition, and obviously recently changed head coaches. Greg Wood's out, and Jason Strange, the ex Grand Slam winning Wales under-20s coach, coming in and taking over, and they'll be buoyed on with that victory that we spoke about over Llanelli a couple of weeks ago. So, boys, what are your thoughts on that one? And do you think Ebervale can pull off an upset?
Yeah, I think Ebu was sort of like Bridgend, really going through a transition period. You know, lost their head coach, and you know it's a tough place to go, isn't it? You know, they're on the back of a good win against Llanelli. Carmarthen won't want to go up there. It's a really tough place to play. I know they're top of the league, as you said, but you know they are really inconsistent. We saw that in the cup, and we've sort of seen that recently as well. You know, they beat Cardiff away in the league. The week after, you know, they lost comfortably in the cup. So that's the thing with Quins. On their day they can beat anyone, but I suppose they can also lose to anyone when they're not at their best. So it'd be a tough game for them, but I think I would put them as slight favourites. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone will take confidence from that win over Llanelli. It's a big thing, picking up that first win of the campaign. I said that they're looking at, they're trying to play some nice rugby. Jason Strange has done a decent job since he's come in. I think Carmarthen, I know they're top of the league. I think they played the game more, a couple of games more than other sides, but they're going under the radar a little bit. There's not many people really speaking about Quins as maybe, going on to push for that top four and things. And they're playing some decent rugby there. And again, you'd fancy Quins to come away with the win this weekend. And, they're looking like a strong side to me.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to touch on as well, Jason Strange brought in Geraint Lewis as well, who's been involved in a number of roles with the WRU, worked with Jason Strange previously as well. So I think if any two people are going to get that Ebervale team playing good rugby and ticking over and winning some games, I think they got the perfect duo there to sort of do that. It's arguably two of the best coaches in the league, and they're both on in the Ebervale coaching staff now. So I think if you're an Ebervale fan, you're looking at them too, thinking with positivity, really, because I think they're exactly who they needed at the right moment in time, I think. Yeah, moving on then, and I think this will be a tasty game up at the Wern. Merthyr taking on Llandovery. Llandovery finishing top of the Western group in the Cup. Merthyr sort of mid-table in the Cup. Both teams coming into it then off decent, obviously Merthyr, and really good form for Llandovery. So boys, what do you think this game's going to be like?
Yeah, I think Merthyr will be hurting after last Sunday, obviously last minute defeat away to Aberavon. And I've been quite impressed with Merthyr. Saw them play Swansea the other week, and really big physical team, can really get stuck into teams and grind out victories, which is really important. And obviously Llandovery, good team. I think it's a bit of a clash of styles, to be honest. Llandovery, really good running rugby team. Merthyr, I like to keep it tight. Can really, like I said, grind out victories. So I think it will be close. I'd probably put Llandovery as slight favourites, but I wouldn't be surprised if Merthyr did edge that game, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it'd be a cracking game, to be honest with you. You said Merthyr probably can try and stop Llandovery from playing. We know how strong Merthyr are up front, and they do have players like Gareth Thompson who can control matches, and then Llandovery on the other hand play some of the best rugby in the league. The way they throw the ball around, score some lovely tries. Some of the rugby they play is unstoppable, so it should be a great game there. I think Llandovery will edge it as favourites in a minute, but then, with the conditions this weekend and stuff, you might not be able to throw the ball around as much, so it should be an interesting game.
Yeah, and although their game plan is sort of forward-centric, Merthyr do have some good finishers in the outside backs as well. So you think if Llandovery are trying to throw the ball around and it's not quite coming off due to the conditions, I think Merthyr definitely have the types of players that can capitalise on mistakes out in the backfield as well. So I think that'll be a really interesting game. I think it might be quite an open game, as games normally are with Llandovery. I mean, it's sort of all or nothing with them. So yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting game and plenty of good rugby on show, I'm sure. Yeah, moving on to the last game then, and Swansea are making the long trip up to Colwyn Bay to RGC this weekend. Boys, what are your thoughts on this one?
I've been impressed with RGC recently, so I think they'll definitely go in as favourites. I think Swansea will struggle during this period because they lose quite a few boys to Wales in the 20s, and the Ospreys boys that would usually drop down to play for them won't, because they'll be playing for the Ospreys. So yeah, I think it'll be quite a tough afternoon for them, and I think RGC will get the bonus point win.
Yeah, I agree with that. The way RGC have been playing, that win against Merthyr a few weeks ago, where they comfortably beat them in the end, shows the quality they've got on their side, and some of the rugby they've played this year has been great to watch. Like you said, Swansea will be maybe a complete different squad to what we've seen over the last few weeks. I know that they played Neath a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week, and then we got a few changes. So it'll be interesting to see maybe the side they put out, but you've got to fancy RGC to come away with that on the weekend.
Yeah, I think that was a good opportunity for Swansea. Obviously, the game obviously fixed around Neath's 150th year anniversary, but I think it fell in quite a good time for them, really. Obviously, as you mentioned, they lost a few boys to the 20s, and a few boys will be with the Ospreys in this period now. So I think it was probably a good opportunity to get a friendly in and try out some new faces, and sort of see where they're at and whether they can jump into the team, because they will need. Obviously, we know how relentless the Premiership is, and how often players pick up injuries, and how the depth you need in to be successful. Obviously, if we look at the most successful sides, Newport, Cardiff, Aberavon, their strength and depth, as we touched on with Aberavon earlier, is they've almost got 3 players that can play in any position. And I think that's something that the teams at the bottom of the table, sort of Ebervale, Llanelli, Swansea, that's something they lack sometimes. So I think for them to have the opportunity to put out some new faces in that game the week before last, I think that could really benefit them going forward now. And I think they'll know who can drop in and who can make a difference, and sort of who needs a little bit more development time. That's a wrap for this week then, and previewing this week's games. We'll be back with a guest podcast on Friday, and we'll be back next week as well to review these games. Just before we go, I just wanted to touch on the under 20s and say congratulations, really. I think they answered a few of their critics back last weekend with a big win against Scotland up in Colwyn Bay. We've been really impressed, haven't we, boys, with some of the boys that have been playing in the Premiership, stepping up to the under 20s. And I know Ollie Andrew scored a good try in their disappointing defeat out in Ireland. Harry Houston scored a good try this week. Captain Alex Mann as well. We've been really impressed with in the Prem. Played a few games for Cardiff, and I think he looks like a player for the future. Definitely, he looks like a really strong leader. So we've been really impressed with some of those Prem boys, and obviously wish them all the best now for the Six Nations going forward. Thanks again to our sponsors, Lecker Food Co. as well, and just keep an eye on our social medias at Welsh Prem Pod, and for some updates, and we'll be back again with some podcasts soon. Thank you and goodbye.